The crisp air that met Clara as she stepped off the bus felt wrong. This part of the city was grittier than she had imagined, the streets narrower, the neon signs buzzing with an intensity that felt more menacing than welcoming. She clutched her travel guide, her heart starting to thud. She'd planned this adventure for years, a dream trip to Japan, a country whose art, traditions, and bustling cityscapes she had long admired. But as she looked around, a knot of dread tightened in her stomach. Her wallet, her passport gone. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The faces of the few people out this late were closed off, their gazes quick and dismissive. This wasn't the tourist-friendly district she'd been heading for. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. A group of men in flashy jackets noticed her confusion, their laughter echoing in the alley as they approached. One of them spoke to her in rapid Japanese, his eyes raking over her with a predatory gleam. Alone, terrified, and desperate, Clara felt a sob catch in her throat. She had read about parts of the city to avoid, places where tourists were easy prey. She had accidentally wandered into one. I'm lost, she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. One of the men reached for her arm. You come with us. Pure fear seized her. Her mind spiraled. Would she be robbed, or worse? Would she ever make it home? Just as panic was about to consume her, she saw him. A man emerged from the shadows of a garage, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. He wasn't tall or imposing, but he moved with a quiet confidence. He was handsome, with a strong jaw and dark, perceptive eyes that seemed to take in the entire situation at once. For a heartbeat, their gazes locked, and in that fleeting connection, the world shifted. Clara's breath hitched. She was clearly in peril, yet she found herself unable to look away from the mechanic standing before her. His overalls were stained with oil, his boots were scuffed, but he carried an air of authority that the flashy men lacked. It wasn't his clothes that made her heart pound, but his eyes, deep, dark, and holding a spark of something she didn't expect to find here: concern. The men muttered something aggressive toward him. The mechanic, however, didn't flinch. Instead, he studied Clara, his gaze moving from her trembling hands to her frightened expression. Then he spoke. Who are you? His voice was low and steady. Clara swallowed. I'm Clara. I was supposed to be in a different part of the city, but my things were stolen. I don't know what happened. The alley fell quiet. The men looked at their leader, then at the mechanic, waiting. The mechanic sighed and addressed them in Japanese, his tone firm and unyielding. Though Clara couldn't understand the words, she sensed he was defending her. Finally, he turned back to her. It's not safe for you here, he said softly. But I'll take care of this. A tremor went through her. What did that mean? Was he truly helping, or was she trading one danger for another? Her thoughts were a frantic blur when one of the men suddenly lunged for her arm. She's ours, he snarled. No, the mechanic interrupted, his voice like steel. I'll take her. Everyone froze. The man holding her frowned. Kenji, this is not your business, Kenji. So that was his name. Clara felt her legs tremble as Kenji stared down the other man, his expression unreadable. Let her go, Kenji commanded. For a tense second, nobody moved. Then, the man grudgingly released her. Kenji looked at Clara. Come with me. She hesitated. Could she trust this stranger? But what other choice did she have? Her heart hammering against her ribs, she took a shaky breath and followed him out of the alley, knowing with absolute certainty that her life had just taken a turn from which she could never go back. Clara followed Kenji through a maze of dimly lit streets, her heart pounding with every step. The world around her felt surreal, like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. The air was cool and smelled of rain and exhaust, the streets eerily silent except for their footsteps. Kenji said nothing, walking just ahead of her, his posture relaxed but aware. She couldn't fathom why he was helping her. Was he genuinely trying to keep her safe, or was he leading her into a different kind of trap? After what felt like an eternity, they arrived at a nondescript building with a garage on the ground floor. Kenji led her up a narrow flight of stairs, and she was surprised to find it wasn't some gangster's den, but his apartment. The space was simple and cluttered with tools and car magazines, but it was clean. It was a place of solitude. You'll stay here, Kenji finally said, turning to face her. Clara stared. Here. He nodded. For now. It's too dangerous for you out there. She wanted to bombard him with questions. Why he was risking himself for her. Why he brought her to his home instead of calling the police. But before she could speak, Kenji's expression hardened. You don't get it, do you? He said in a low tone. This neighborhood isn't a tourist spot. One mistake, one wrong word to the wrong person, and you could disappear. A chill traced its way down her spine. I don't want to make trouble, she whispered. I just want to go home. Kenji's jaw tightened. That's not going to be simple. Silence hung in the small room. Clara sank onto the edge of his worn sofa, her mind reeling. Would she ever leave this place? Would she ever see her family again? Kenji watched her, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Was it pity? Get some rest, he said at last. I'll figure something out. With that, he turned and left her alone in the quiet apartment. Clara hugged her knees to her chest, tears stinging her eyes. She had come to Japan seeking an adventure, but this was a terrifying reality she could never have foreseen. Clara couldn't sleep. The small apartment was quiet, the bed surprisingly comfortable, but her mind refused to quiet down. She was stranded in a dangerous part of a foreign city, a ghost with no name and no papers. Would she ever get out? Would she ever see home again? She pushed the tears from her eyes. Crying was useless. Just then, she heard the door creak open. It was Kenji, his dark eyes finding hers in the dim light. You're awake, he observed. Clara swallowed. How can I sleep? I have no idea what's going to happen to me. Kenji was quiet for a long moment before sighing and taking a seat in a chair across from her. His gaze was direct, but not harsh. I will help you, he finally stated. But you have to do exactly as I say. No arguments, no mistakes. Clara stared at him. What? Kenji didn't reply right away. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his expression hidden in the shadows. His voice was softer when he spoke. You remind me of someone. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Who? She asked. A muscle in Kenji's jaw twitched. For the first time, he looked vulnerable. My sister, he said quietly. She was like you. Spirited, stubborn, always asking questions. Clara felt a pang of empathy. Where is she now? A shadow crossed Kenji's face. She didn't make it. The room fell into a heavy silence. Clara's chest ached. She wanted to offer some comfort, but had no words. She didn't know his story, but she could feel the depth of his pain. After a moment, he stood, his guarded mask slipping back into place. You should sleep, he said. Tomorrow, I'll teach you how to survive here. Then he turned and left her alone. Clara lay back, staring at the ceiling. Kenji was an enigma, rough on the surface but with a hidden depth. And for the first time since arriving, she didn't feel entirely alone. The next morning, Clara awoke to a soft knock. Kenji stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Get up, he said. We have a lot to do. Clara hesitated but did as he asked. She still didn't know if she could fully trust him, but he was her only lifeline. As she emerged from the small bedroom, Kenji handed her a set of clothes. Wear these. Clara unfolded them. A simple dark hoodie and jeans, plain and unremarkable, nothing like her usual style. Why? She asked. Kenji sighed. If you walk around looking like a lost tourist, you'll attract the wrong kind of attention. Attention you can't handle. Clara swallowed. He was right. She changed quickly, and when she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked like she could belong here, except she didn't. Kenji studied her, then nodded. Good. Now listen closely. Clara's heart pounded as Kenji led her to a small table. He sketched a rough map on a napkin, pointing to a few locations. This is our block, he said, tapping a small circle. And this, over here, is the only man who might know where your things are. Clara leaned in, her heart racing. The second location was a pachinko parlor several blocks away, in the heart of the territory. Kenji's voice was calm but firm. If you want to survive here, you need to blend in. Say less, watch more, and above all, don't trust anyone. Clara swallowed hard. Not even you. Kenji's dark eyes flickered with an unreadable emotion. I'm the only reason you're not on the street right now, he said quietly. His words sent a chill through her. Clara wanted to ask more, But before she could, Kenji grabbed a jacket. "Let's go," he said. "I need to show you something." The streets of the neighborhood were intimidating and unfamiliar. Clara walked beside Kenji, keeping her head down as he'd instructed. Everything felt alien. The people moved with a purpose she couldn't understand, their faces unexpressive, their eyes avoiding hers. She felt like an imposter, a ghost in a world she didn't belong to. Kenji led her into a small noodle shop tucked away in an alley. It was dimly lit, but it smelled of rich broth and spices. A woman behind the counter looked up, her expression wary. Kenji spoke in rapid Japanese, and the woman nodded before disappearing into the kitchen. Clara tensed. "What did you tell her?" Kenji didn't look at her right away. Then he turned, his gaze steady. "That you're my fiancé." Clara's eyes widened. "What?" "It's the only way to keep you safe," he said simply. "People ask fewer questions when they think you belong to someone." Clara's cheeks grew warm. His fiancé? She was torn between relief and a strange, terrifying thrill. Before she could protest, the woman returned with 2 bowls of ramen. Kenji slid one toward Clara. "Eat," he ordered. She hesitated, then picked up her chopsticks, her hands shaking. Kenji watched her. "This is just the beginning." His voice was low, with a dangerous edge. "If you want to live, you have to play the part." Clara's heart hammered as she stared at Kenji. His fiancé. She barely knew this man, and now she had to pretend to be engaged to him in one of the city's most dangerous neighborhoods. Her hands trembled as she fumbled with the noodles. They smelled incredible, but her appetite was gone. "What happens after this?" she asked. "Do we just keep lying?" Kenji's gaze darkened. "It's not a lie if it keeps you alive." His words sent a shiver down her spine. Before she could reply, the woman behind the counter spoke again in Japanese, her voice low and urgent. Kenji's expression tensed. He grabbed Clara's wrist. "We have to go. Now." Clara barely had time to stand before Kenji pulled her toward the back exit. "What's happening?" she whispered. "Someone recognized you." Kenji muttered. "We stayed too long." Panic surged through her. Was she already compromised? Kenji moved with a swift, certain grace, leading her through a labyrinth of back alleys, never looking back. Clara's lungs burned, but she didn't dare slow down. She could hear voices behind them, getting closer. Kenji swore under his breath. This wasn't part of the plan. They rounded a corner and nearly ran into a group of men. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Their eyes narrowed, landing directly on her. One of them stepped forward. "Who was she?" he demanded. Kenji's grip on Clara's hand tightened. His face was a calm mask, but she could feel the tension in his body. "My fiancé," he said, his voice firm. Silence. The men scrutinized them for what felt like a lifetime. Then, one of them smirked. A pretty one, Clara swallowed, wishing she could become invisible. The man's gaze lingered on her a moment longer before he nodded at Kenji. "Move along." Kenji didn't need to be told twice. He pulled Clara forward, walking quickly, not looking back. It wasn't until they were several blocks away that Clara realized she was shaking uncontrollably. Kenji finally ducked into a deserted parking garage, leaning against a concrete pillar. "That was close," he breathed. Clara's chest heaved. "Who were they?" Kenji exhaled slowly. "People you don't want to see again." Silence stretched between them. Then Kenji looked at her, his gaze intense. "Still think pretending is a bad idea?" Clara said nothing. For the first time, she understood the true depth of the danger she was in, and Kenji might be the only person who could save her. Clara sat on the cold concrete floor of the garage, her heart still racing from their close call. Kenji paced, his jaw tight. "We need to get you out of here, and soon," he muttered. Clara looked up at him. "Why are you doing this for me?" Kenji stopped, the question hanging between them. For a long moment, he was silent. Finally, he sighed and slid down the pillar to sit beside her. "Because I know what it's like to be trapped," he admitted, his voice low. "To want to be free, but have nowhere to go." Clara's chest tightened. There was so much more to Kenji than the quiet mechanic. She swallowed. "And what happens after? If I get out?" Kenji turned to her, his expression unreadable. "You go home." A strange ache bloomed in her heart. The idea of leaving Kenji behind was unexpectedly painful. "But what about you?" she whispered. Kenji offered a small, humorless smirk. I'll be fine. Clara wasn't so sure she believed him. The days melted into a week as Kenji worked on a plan to get her to the embassy. The more time they spent together in the confines of a small world, the more Clara realized something terrifying. She was falling for him. Every shared glance, every accidental brush of their hands, every quiet conversation under the dim light of his apartment made her heart ache. But she knew it was impossible. Kenji was a part of this world. She was just a visitor. Still, her heart wouldn't listen. One evening, as they sat in comfortable silence, Clara finally voiced the thought that had been haunting her. What if I don't want to leave? Kenji stiffened, turning to her with dark, emotional eyes. Don't be foolish, Clara. I'm serious, she whispered. What if Kenji grabbed her wrist, his grip firm. You don't belong here. His voice was sharp, but it was laced with a raw, painful emotion. Clara's eyes burned with unshed tears. And you do. Kenji let out a bitter laugh. I don't have a choice. Silence. Then, before she could lose her nerve, Clara reached up and cupped his face. For the first time, Kenji didn't pull away. And when she leaned in and kissed him, he kissed her back. It was desperate and dangerous, a confirmation of everything she feared, but it changed nothing. Kenji was the first to pull away, resting his forehead against hers, his breathing ragged. You have to go, Clara. Tears slipped down her cheeks. What if I love you? Kenji closed his eyes, his hands trembling slightly. He whispered, Then that's why you have to leave. The night of her departure arrived. Kenji had arranged for a contact to drive her to the train station, where she would begin her journey to Tokyo and, eventually, home. She stood on the darkened street corner, the city lights a distant blur. Kenji stood beside her, his face a mask of neutrality. This is it, he said. Clara's heart felt like it was breaking. She wanted to stay, to fight for him, but he had already made the decision for them both. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, intricately machined Metal Gear on a leather cord. I made this, he said, pressing it into her palm. So you'll always find your way. Her tears spilled over. Come with me, Kenji smiled, a genuine, heartbreaking smile. Maybe in another life, before she could say anything else, a car pulled up, and Kenji opened the door, disappearing into the shadows as she got in. Clara clutched the metal charm, her heart shattering as the car pulled away. Years later, Clara stood in a bustling airport, her heart pounding. She had built a new life, but she never forgot him. And then she saw him. Kenji. Older, his face showing more character, but unmistakably him, standing across the terminal as if he'd been pulled from a dream she never thought would come true. Kenji, she breathed. He saw her, and a slow, familiar smile spread across his face. I told you, he said, closing the distance between them. Maybe in another life, Clara's heart soared. Maybe this was that life.